So firstly, to the two of you, congratulations on the film. For Pietra first, how did you come across the critics and like how did this story start to take shape?
So I just read a lot. I'm curious. I follow, things down rabbit holes. I talk to lots of people, and ostensibly all my films are about creative people in various levels of isolation. I suppose that's what I'm attracted to. And I had read something. At the time I was sort of doing some investigation into other cultures around the world, language, how to rebuild cultures. I'm quite active here in the Maori language revitalization and culture. And I come from Irish heritage. And my papa spoke Irish, but nobody else in my family. So we have lost it in our family with immigration. But yeah, and I was, sort of trying to understand the difference between Afrofuturism and African futurism, and I came across a story about the critics, and this was 7 years ago. And my process is I don't try to overanalyze why I'm attracted to something. I just move on it. And so I spent the next 3 days, messaging them various ways through social media, trying to call, etc., until eventually I managed to get through, or somebody came back to me. And I think I was sort of on a plane 10 days later or something. Like, I just try to go and then obviously meet the parents, and for them to see, meet me, and just to sort of talk about what may come. But I film because I make all my own films. I film for as long as the film needs. And so when I brief people, it's like, I don't know how long I'm filming for. I don't really know what the story is. You'll get sick of me at one stage, but I'll still be there. And and let's begin. And so we did. We began, and here we are 7 years later.
Yeah, it's in at the Sydney Film Festival 7 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I really loved the scene at the beginning. I guess this is more a question for Raymond, but where Richard is saying how Nollywood is stupid and how it makes him cringe. Um, what drew you guys to sci-fi, or what were the films that you guys watched growing up? And what is it about Nollywood that doesn't click for you?
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for the question.
Okay.
Um, what drew us to sci-fi and what did we watch? I think that primarily, like a lot of young people, in the late 2010s and the early 2000s, we were very drawn to blockbuster films, the superhero films, just films that, featured characters from like other planets and just took us from the reality that we're primarily used to. And, being able to do something like that, would like was really cool, and just be able to sort of like experiment with that was really cool. So, what led us to sci-fi is that we wanted to recreate what we were watching, as young children. And the Nollywood, our sentiment towards Nollywood has changed and evolved over the years. Richard would not make that statement in his current as he exists now, because I think that we are older now to better understand the dynamics. For us, is there's so much to Nollywood that we don't understand, and there's so much to Nollywood that we are learning about with each day as we progress. I think that primarily we are just trying to find a better way of working and also like, making films that better represent us. So yeah.
Yeah. I noticed that like yeah, throughout the film you show clips from your filmography from you guys. And I noticed like the sci-fi you're kind of drawn to is kind of like yeah, that kind of blockbuster, but not yeah, it didn't feel like mainstream like Marvel movies it felt like a little bit like Akira or like Close Encounters of the Third Kind or like or especially sci-fi films that dabble a little bit in violence too, which I also really like too. So I'm a big fan too. So yeah, I think this is really interesting. I guess yeah, as
But can I just butt in? But also, I mean, ostensibly we had 54 of their short films to choose from, right? Just this amazing, beautiful wealth. And I would say that I'm not particularly drawn to sci-fi, but what I love about the critics' films is there's also humor. I mean, I love that film Shock, when Victor shocks himself. I mean, the sense of humor in it all as well is just fantastic.
a
Yeah. So,
100%.
and the levels of drama. I mean, I suppose my ignorance was that sci-fi is just kind of lightsabers and starships, but actually there's an incredible level of drama that they have acted, directed, conceived, written, shot, as little kids as well.
Yeah, it's
I mean, it's phenomenal to think about, really.
yeah, like
Sorry.
a lot of, no, 100%. Like a lot of sci-fi draws upon like spirituality and like kind of concerns for the future. And I could see that in your short films. So yeah, amazing. Um, I guess the next question's for both of you, but like, well, I guess more for the critics, but I guess both can answer. But like, I guess what was it like seeing, especially some of the uglier parts, some of the particular incidences, police brutality, the incident with the with your former manager, Ridwan, but seeing all of that, like kind of like decades of your life, because it started from childhood, condensed down into like an hour and 40 minutes. And I guess for Pietro, what was the challenge of that, kind of condensing that down?
You know, because of COVID, I couldn't go back in 2010. So we had to sort of work remotely, and this co-directing sort of animal kind of evolved really. And I was never quite sure what the story was. Um, but I did have something in the back of my mind of what I hoped was going to evolve. And in the end, it was a coming of age film. And if you examine a coming of age story, that is a great story, not just a good film, but a great film, then sadly, it has to show some real extremes of humanity that therefore reveal these personalities. Um, so, as a filmmaker, of course, I had to think that, I hoped that, hope is a horrible word, I kind of planned that extreme things would happen. As a human being, I don't want those things to happen to them. But when you enter into trying to make great films that resonate with the most people you possibly can, and that is the measure for me of a great film. It is how it resonates with different cultures, different ages, different peoples. Then you need so many facets of a society that sadly affect 1, 2, 9 people, and show how they are resilient, how they recover or don't, how they, push on, what mechanisms they do to survive certain things. So when the critics contacted me to tell me about Ridwan, I'd already had some big issues with Ridwan, not sexual, just as a personality. But I said to them on the Zoom call, I said, we can stop now. We don't have to carry on. The decision is with you. And I hope that, as I worked to condense these decades, as you say, these hundreds of hours of footage into 100 minutes, 101 minutes, that the critics still feel that they had some power and collaboration to kind of go, we don't want that in. And that's all that duty of care consideration, really. Yeah, and also that's the benefit of me being self-employed and making my own films, is I'm not answerable to anybody else except the subjects of my film.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that's amazing. Raymond, Ronald, yeah, what was it like watching the film and seeing your lives just? condensed down to 100 minutes.
I think that the honest truth is that it's very strange, and I'm not sure that it is something that, I would ever get used to. Um, I think that my for me, when we watch the film or when I watch the film, I hope that, it is helpful for other people and other young persons like ourselves. Um, is think that, one of the entire points of life is to be able to see, you know, what the people who have come before you have done and to be able to learn from that. So, really, I just hope that our film can be helpful, to anybody that comes across it. Yeah.
100%. Oh, Ronald, do you want do you have an answer or kind of an idea or like any thoughts on this?
Um, I think I think my somewhat follows similar to what Raymond has said.
Mhm.
Um, but I think one thing for me was also it was the film was sort of like memory for me also. Um, because it's like making films for that long or being with ourselves and doing all what we're doing for that long, you sort of get lost in everything. And when you're like focused on what you're doing now, sort of start to forget. So I think the film did that for me, and it was very important because there were moments that you you don't necessarily remember very clearly. So it sort of felt like new experiences for me also, even though I usually live through them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm interested. Pietra brought it up before, but this idea of a duty of care, her being like having agency and autonomy on her filmmaking. But I'm interested in this idea of like, because yeah, I've been lucky enough in my career to make a few online documentaries and stuff too. But I don't usually make, I've never really made a documentary about filmmakers. Like I've, I've been kind of, I've made film about people who don't understand the process or don't understand cameras or don't understand filmmaking or that type of storytelling. Um, I guess for yeah, for all of you, what was that relationship like? Like we can start with Pietro again, but like, did it feel different making a story about storytellers in the sense?
Um, oh, do Ronald or Raymond, do you want to start or shall I?
Oh, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that what I wanted to say is like, I one thing about the process is that we think that from, somewhere just like in along the process, we realized that it was going to be very difficult for us to be quite objective, about, these stories and our experiences. So we all decided to sort of, allow Petra be the person who would sort of guide the direction and, the way in which the film sort of progressed and, what it has become. So yeah. It was quite interesting, Sha. I remember watching an earlier version of the cut, and I told her that, for us, it's like every version of this cut would always mean something to us because, it's our lives. And, when you're already approaching the work with that kind of sentiment, you might not be able to look at things critically. So, I felt like Petra brought in that external POV in the process of working on the film. So, yeah.
That's great.
I think for me, I suppose all my sorry, I'll just turn that off. That's our sales agent Killian messaging me. All the people I approach are storytellers in different forms. Like Walpay and Yellow is Forbidden as a storyteller through fashion, Vanessa Beecroft through performance art. And the Afghan people, they were through film, but that was a different kind of filmmaking film. But for me, this was extraordinary. that they had these talents and have these talents, and that they grew. These tools and these talents and these abilities grew. And that was important for me to show in the cut, that the quality of their work, how that improved as they grew up. So yeah, it was kind of glorious, but there is an amazing maturity to them. Like, I often would come off the calls or the Zooms or the WhatsApps or whatever, however we were communicating, and I felt like the child. I mean, because they were teaching me to remember to play. And I think as creatives, as we get older, we start becoming shuttered, and we start moving into conventions and overthinking things. And I've always tried not to overthink things, but it naturally friggin' happens, doesn't it? And so the critics really kind of reminded me. I'd get the footage and I'd go, far out, this is wild. What have I got here? How what's the story? What's that shot? But how I began to approach it was this word restlessness. And I approached it all as all being fantastic and all being perfect. The sound, the picture, the approach, the camera angle, the quality of the camera. We'd shot on friggin' everything. Never to kind of judge it as from my perspective here in Auckland and my 30 years of being in the industry. I tried not to judge it like that, because it had this beauty that was beyond the regular shape or form of filmmaking. And so with this word restlessness, that's how I approached looking at their footage, how I approached the edit, and how I approached their story. Because as a coming of age film, when we are growing up, we're restless for life. We're restless for our political view, our sexual view, our first relationships, moving away from home, the parents, the work, all these things. We want it now.
So that's great timing that actually Godwin's here because, yeah, as a guest, one of my last kind of final questions, I think the film really touches on this important idea that, like, how artists from particular countries and communities are kind of held to particular expectations. Like, you have to be like this, you have to be like that. Um, yeah, there's another really great scene. I think it's in the first half where you guys are arguing over the definition of fancy and like mental slavery. And I think that scene was really good and captured that really well. I'm just wondering now, do you guys still feel that kind of pressure at this point in your career? Because I think that conversation was years ago, and now you guys are different people at different stages. Do you still feel that pressure? Or do you feel that pressure at all, I guess?
And this is primarily about the question of, do we have to make films that are African because we are Africans?
Yeah, and what does that even mean? Which I really like that
Yeah.
you guys address.
I don't think that we feel that pressure anymore. But also, I find that this question almost also connects to something that Petra mentioned, which is restlessness. And I I have come to sort of observe something. Um, I feel like I might go on a bit of a tangent here, but I've come to observe something. So when we were working on our, narrative feature film, which I were in post-production for, we the entire point of us working on that film was to make films like when we were younger, and we found ourselves in this particular position where, we are older now. Most of us are in our early 20s, and we're trying to remember what it was like, making films, the same films that we made by ourselves, but we're just younger then. So we put ourselves in that position, and, we have created this film that is very I don't know if I can call it unconventional, but I think that is an interesting mix of where we were when we made it, um, which is like 2 years ago. We shot it in December 2024, and also like what we were as, filmmakers who made films in our childhood. And I find it very interesting that it's almost difficult to understand, primarily because as the language of filmmaking has gone through certain expected outcomes. It's like films have to be made a certain way, they have to be designed, they have to be edited a certain way, we have to see some sort of imagery, everything has to be clear. And I realized that maybe to sort of now transition into the question about like our identity as filmmakers from Nigeria is, um, I don't know, we don't have an answer as to what that is. I think that currently our approach to filmmaking is we want to make films that are good, films that anybody anywhere in the world can connect to, regardless of what we look like, where we are from, and the scenery that is in the film. And I think that that's where we are staying. We have come to accept the fact that, anything that would make would be our own truly. And what we are truly is that we are Nigerians and we are Africans, and really no one can, take that away from us. So, yeah.
That's a great answer. Ronald Godwin, did you have any thoughts on this kind of question?
Hi Andrew. Sorry for coming in late.
Congrats on the tour. Oh, the show.
Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Um, yeah, I mean, personally, I cannot think back to what frustration was leading that conversation in particular. I remember the first time when we were watching the films at the Berlinale. I tried to even understand my stance on like the conversation, and I tried to think back on the backstory of what must have forced that conversation. I think generally it was really relaying on the fact that there's an idea of like what fancy means, and if you try to portray that from an African means, it is more or less looked down on because it's not conventional fancy. It's fancy from a perspective that we know or that I know personally. And this, because the more we watch the film, the more that scene comes up, the more I think to myself, what was inspiring this kind of like personal outrage that I was having in that scene. I've currently like experienced that differently as a musician right now. When I meet people, so I make music that revolves generally basically all kind of genres that I listened to growing up. Pop music. I make silent ballads. I make a lot of music that I listened to basically growing up. But because I'm from Africa or from Nigeria, the first question that pops out of people's mouths, most especially, is that, oh, you make Afrobeat music, and this is not certainly this is not a diss, or this is not something terrible per se, but it is just a sense of um an already prepared box that people put you in because of a certainty of like where you come from or your location. So I think back at like having that conversation in the moment, and I think it came from a fear of being labeled a Nigerian filmmaker, in the sense of not being able to grasp opportunities that possibly filmmakers outside of where we come from or our rich would have access to. And I think that fear was really overwhelming because, of course, we are Nigerian first, but in the back of my mind, I want to be Nigerian and also do things that can showcase Nigeria in a light different from how it's currently been showcased or how it was currently been showcased. So even up till now, I still try to understand why that conversation was somewhat almost annoying to me, because it's not set on stone. I feel like with this conversation we can have so many other conversations and how it's like kind of like connected, in a sense. For me personally, I realized that it was just coming from a fear of being boxed. I for one have always thought that everybody should be able to become anything they want to become on their own terms. And coming from Nigeria, we know what a Nigerian film is. If you or I'd rather say a Nigerian film right now because of the mass-produced type of Nigerian films we have. We know what that it almost feels like it's slur to some extent, you know. So it came from a place of fear of not being labeled as that, but to be accepted generally as like what the possibilities can hold. But also now it's like I don't even think about people's acceptance anymore. You know, personally, I just think we're the place where we just make stuff and we make the kind of things we want to see. And it's less about where we used to be of like thinking about what people would think about this thing or how people will accept it. It's more about how we want to make that and, you know, how it reflects our society and the things that kind of matter at the moment to us because we're a bit older now. So I think my priority has changed, but I really try to understand why I was so angry in that scene in particular. And I've still not gotten a full answer of it. So I'm sorry, I just gave you a half answer to this question per
No,
se.
that was great. It's it's interesting to have like a film like this where it's so cements periods of your life, and then you can kind of reflect upon it. Kind of, yeah, for the rest of your lives, the rest of your careers. You have this thing that you can look back on constantly. I think it's really amazing. A lot of for other people, I think it's just like looking back at photos or like when your phone reminds you like this happened 3 years ago. But you guys have a documentary that's playing at the Sydney Film Festival. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah, surreal. I think
Ronald, do you have
that
any? Oh, sorry, I was gonna say, Ronald, do you have any
uh,
thoughts before we like to finish up this question before we wrap up?
No, 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 nothing. I think Raymond and Gordon, what they said was spot on.
Perfect. Sorry, Raymond, I interrupted you. Sorry too. Um, I guess it's a very last question to kind of wrap things up. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for waking up so early. I think it's like at 8 a.m. where you guys are. Yeah. Um, do you have a final message for Australian fans or Australian moviegoers and cinephiles who'll be checking out the film? I think I forgot the screening times, but I know it's the beginning of June. It's throughout the first 2 weeks of June. But yeah, do you have any?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's sadly it's at the same time as the Tribeca Film Festival where our North American premiere is, so I can't. And I'm going to that. Unfortunately, the critics can't come, but I can't go to Sydney, and it's a lovely festival. Um, for me, one of the things about it that is really, I think, important right now is in the end, the film is joyful and uh, full of friendship and love and creativity. And those are all great things for us to kind of hold dear because, yeah, we all need more of that. That's what I think.
I think so too. Yeah, do you guys have any message?
our narrative feature is coming soon.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that's primarily our message. Um,
We'll have to chat about that when the film's close to coming out. We'll have to chat again about that.
yeah, yeah, fingers crossed. I think that it's tonally different from Crocodile. Side note is someone who had watched the documentary and who watched like a cut of the feature film was I think the first note was, you know, are we okay? Because they were kind of like, you know, connected to, you know, us being young people and, you know, very joyful version in Crocodile. And then you go to this other film that is just like on another emotional scale. So yeah.
I can't wait.
But yeah. Yeah. Let's see, we're almost done. So yeah, we're looking forward to sharing that as well.
100%. Yeah, thank you everyone for your time. I love the film.